Chapter 45 of Genesis. We promised to come back and just finish just a little bit more here, because we've mentioned that the gift of the word of knowledge and the word of wisdom is always unto profit in the story and in the life of Joseph and his brothers in Egypt. We note that later on in chapter 45, starting at verse 1, then Joseph could not refrain himself before all them that stood by him, and he cried, cause every man to go out from me. And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard. And Joseph said unto his brothers, I am Joseph. Doth my father yet live? And his brothers could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. Another version says they were dumbfounded. Like, what is this, you know? They couldn't hardly believe their eyes. Then, of course, Joseph said, come near to me, I pray you. And they came near, and he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. He says, now don't be grieved. Don't be grieved, nor angry with yourselves that you sold me here. But God did send me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and there are yet 5 years in which there shall be neither earing nor harvest. God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you that sent me here, but God. I said that there's got to be a profit, a purpose for the use of the gifts of the Spirit. And if this doesn't show the profit or the purpose of it, I don't understand the gifts of the Spirit then at this point. The profit was, of course, is to save his people as a posterity in the face of the earth. And as we read the story on down further, we note that when Jacob saw Joseph in chapter 45 and verse 28, and Jacob says, is it enough? Joseph, my son, is yet alive. I will go and see him before I die. And then, of course, if you go back, as you remember the teaching in the gifts of the Spirit on the gift of prophecy, we showed you the time when Jacob now blesses Joseph's sons Manasseh, or his own grandsons Manasseh and Ephraim. And all of these things fit in together, showing you one gift after another as they go through in the lives of the Old Testament patriarchs. And then, of course, we're going to be looking at these in the New Testament as well. Now let's take a peek at this business of dreams and visions. We have night dreams and day dreams, and we have night visions and day visions, and so on. Let's take a peek at night dreams first of all. People say, well, are dreams that are given to me all born of God? Is every dream born of God? I know that there are those who go around interpreting dreams. They try to make something out of every dream that people dream. Let me say that some dreams are born out of too much lunching at bedtime. That's right. People eat before they go to bed, and of course they get dreams. Some dreams are born out of animosity and bitterness of heart. Some dreams are born out of laughter and love. And I also am aware that there are some dreams that are born of the enemy and produce fear. There are other dreams that bear the imprint of the Most High God. I have had 3 night dreams that I knew were definitely born of God. I'm not going to go into the explanation of them, because the purpose of them is strictly for my own personal edification. Therefore, they would have no purpose or no bearing in telling you what they are. But I know that they were born of God in that on all 3 occasions I sat up quickly in bed, wide awake, remembering in living color everything that happened, to even the people in the dreams that I had never met before in my life. And while I did not completely understand the dreams as they were given to me, yet when they were fulfilled, everything made sense. And each time the dream was fulfilled, the dream came back to me. I forgot the dream after I had it. Then, when it was fulfilled, again I remembered it. I like to think that when we have dreams and we're not too sure whether they are of God, that if we keep dwelling on them and thinking about them and trying to make something out of them, that I would be more inclined to think that they are not of God. I think that generally when a dream is given to us, it is something that seems to pass out of our mind and out of our memory. At least from my own experience, I won't say that that's a blanket statement that I'm going to make, but I believe it could very well be factual. And then when the dream does come to pass, then it comes back to our memory. And I notice this in many of the places in the Scriptures as well. I've also had one vision. You say, well, what is a vision? A vision is living in a third dimension. I know that there are some people who have visions, and they talk about their great angelical visitors that they have in their bedroom, or they talk about all sorts of things that they had 25 years ago. And it seems as though when they talk about them that they continue to so do. They live back there in that visitation that they had. That's all they can talk about. Well, I don't believe for 1 minute that visions or dreams are something that we're supposed to live back there. I think the Scriptures teach us something very, very significant about dreams and visions. But dreams and visions are something that, as I've said before in one of our earlier seminars, is that which is there that God intrudes upon our subconscious or our conscious by an act of His sovereign will. And the vision that I had came very suddenly to me, and again, this is a personal thing. I'm only going to give just a smidgen of it so that you can relate to what I'm trying to tell you about a vision. I had been going through a time in my life when God was dealing with me in a spiritual way, teaching me many things, and my life was being almost paralleled with the children of Israel coming out of Egypt and going into the land of Canaan. I was now living in the city of Vancouver, and it was a Saturday morning. Prior to that time, I had been praying a lot in the Spirit. I loved to get up early in the morning and pray in the Spirit before I went to work. I loved to get up early Saturday mornings and sit in my chair and put my head back and pray in the Spirit. I really enjoyed praying in the Spirit. And it was on this given Saturday morning that I wanted to get up and pray. However, my daughter had invited one of her girlfriends over to stay at the house. And she was sleeping on the Chesterfield, so therefore I couldn't get in and pray as I would have wanted to, and because I always like to pray out loud. So I decided, as I stood and looked out the window, because our window overlooked into the park, and I thought this: I don't know what there is about today. I don't know what there is about today, but there's something special about today. There's something special about today, and I felt such a glow of a presence that I could not quite explain. So I decided to put my iron away, and I went outside into the park there to have fellowship with the Lord. And as I so did, something happened. As I was in the park, I now received a vision from God. My eyes are indeed wide open. I am not in a state of trance, but I am living in another dimension, and I know it. Now, what God revealed to me specifically at that time, I'm not going to say, but I'm going to tell you the results of this vision. First of all, I felt like, as I saw everything that had life, people, every person seemed to have a golden glow about them. Everything that had life glowed. The leaves on the ground glowed. Little ants that are walking across the leaves glowed. The sky was so blue, I'd never seen it so blue before. Everything that had life glowed. My smell was even the more enhanced. Everything that I heard, things that really I didn't see or hear before. Flowers had, everything glowed, and their fragrance was absolutely glorious. I noticed that telephone poles looked dead, dead, dead. Anything that was man-made that had no life in it looked completely dead. But everything that had life glowed. I was living in this state of ecstasy for 1 hour. I came back into my apartment, and a number of things happened at this point which I will not explain. Excepting for the week following that, I lived in a state of high. This happened on a Saturday, Monday night, I went to a regular house meeting, in which case, as I went into the house that evening and the host opened the door, something strange happened. Now, I've had people say, Mary, you know, you look nice today, or I like your dress, or, you know, everything is nice. Maybe I like the way you do your hair. People have given me compliments. We've all received compliments. But when I walked into the door that night, the host stepped back and he said, Mary, you look absolutely radiant tonight. Now, I've never had anybody use the word radiant before. I thought, I guess I must have some kind of a glow about me then that I was not aware of. All that week, and I was working on a secular job, and I was working in a oil service company, and as I went upstairs to go to my office upstairs, I had to hang on to the railing of the steps because I felt drunk with the Spirit. I just felt wobbly. I'm sure that I would have been slain by the power of God at any given time, is the way I felt like it. And every time I looked out the windows, everything still had a gold glow about it. It was an aftermath of this particular vision I received. Well, the vision did wear off, and I came back down to normal living again. But I do know the difference between a vision, which is living in another dimension. I was so taken up in this that from that time on, I have never feared death. To me, I felt like my spirit was going to take off and go to glory. And I knew very well if I died at the time when I was receiving the vision, nobody would have any medical report of my dying. They couldn't figure out, I knew they wouldn't figure out any reason for it. But believe me, my spirit wanted to take off from the body. And I believe I can say I know what it would be like to literally die and go to glory, there's such a release of that spirit from this body that from that time on I have never felt like mourning or felt terrible as far as death is concerned. To me, it's a glorious release. So I was living at half-mast, almost ready to take off because of the glorious sense of that vision. Now, I don't live back there. I only tell it when we come into a teaching session on it, because to me, we want to know the difference between a vision and a revelation or a word of knowledge. A vision is something that God intrudes upon your conscious or subconscious by a deliberate act of His will, and you're living in another dimension. But the gift of the word of knowledge is something then that you reach out to believe and receive. I now believe, I now receive. It's a deliberate act of your will. Completely different two things. So when I hear people talking about, I had a vision today, I like to be sure whether indeed or not it is a vision, or whether it is they're just speaking of receiving a word of knowledge. There's something else that I'm finding that's happening today too. So many people are talking about having visions. Oh, I had a vision today, and I had a vision today. Everybody's going around having visions. And the rest of us are feeling a little unspiritual. You know, we can't quite attain to all these visions. And I say, God, you know, I guess I'm not with it. I'm not getting all these visions that everybody's getting. And we think that unless we're attaining unto all the visions that we're supposed to be having, we're not with it. Something's wrong. I don't think that we should be making people feel that we're so heavenly minded that we're no earthly good. I think we have to relate to people on the basis of what the Scriptures say. So if you'll turn to Philippians chapter 3, because this is our greatest place of source of information. Unless we can relate to this, let's see what it is. Verse 8. Yea, doubtless, I count all things but loss for the excellency of the knowledge of Jesus Christ my Lord, for whom I have suffered the loss of all things, and do count them but dung, that I may win Christ, and be found in Him, not having mine own righteousness, which is of the law, but that which is through the faith of Christ, the righteousness which is of God by faith. Now watch this, that I may have dreams and visions. Is that what your Bible says? No, it doesn't. It says that I may know Him and the power of His resurrection and the fellowship of His sufferings, being made conformable unto His death. if by any means I might attain unto the resurrection of the dead. You think you'd like to have dreams and visions, do you? You really think you would? Do you know that God speaks to us by dreams and visions in proportion to the degree of a challenge that a person faces? Our goal is not to have dreams and visions, and I feel that today some people are making their goal to attain unto dreams and visions and having angelic visitors and so on. And there's an awful lot of talk about angels too. Our goal is to know Jesus. Seek to know Him and Him crucified and raised from the dead. And then, if dreams and visions will be your portion, God will give them to you very nicely. But I want to tell you something else, just to throw it in for free. Be prepared to face the challenge that a vision or a dream will give you. We want a lot of nice, glorious things. But will you be able to stand the test of fulfilling what God wants for you in that dream or that vision? Let's take a look at some of the dreams and visions that were given in the Scriptures. Of course, Joseph, who was sold out by his brethren, God will usually always test us. He gives us a dream or a vision. He'll always test us after we've had this beautiful manifestation. And we can expect sometimes some adverse circumstances, as in the case of Joseph, sold out by his brethren. Take a look at Paul. Paul had a vision. Come over to Macedonia and help us. And then what happened? He ended up in jail for ministering and casting out a spirit of divination. Peter had a vision from the rooftop, remember? And Peter's vision, what did it make him do? It made him go and speak to those nasty, nasty Gentiles. And then you notice as well that Joseph, who was where Mary and Joseph and Jesus, Joseph had a night dream which caused him some great adversity, and he had to go around another way so that the baby Jesus would not be destroyed. Visions are great, but we're not to seek them. And of course, to seek them, I think, is the merry road to fanaticism. We are to seek Jesus and to know Him and to walk in the light of what He gives us. Be prepared to face the challenge that God may give you from a dream or a vision. And I don't think it's necessary that we are required to have many dreams and visions. But you know something? Every time I am faced with, let's say, throwing in the sack, completely washing up and saying, look, I've had it. One or dozen things happen and you get so turned off and, oh, you just think, boy, I'm going to just quit right now. I'm going to go back to maybe where things are a little different. Every time I think I might do something like this, I remember the vision. And God brings it back to my memory, and I realize that God has put a challenge. He has put something there that I cannot leave. I cannot go back. It's almost like a pillar of fire that's there that says, Mary, you can't turn back. You can't. You must go on, because I have given you something that you must do. And so it's always a comfort to my heart. But it's not something that we live in. It's only something that is there, that God says, look back at this pillar of stones that you have laid here now in the river or in the Red Sea or in the River Jordan. You crossed over that way and you can't go back. There's a milestone there that says you can't go back. And let me tell you also that I have to stand before God in the judgment day and say, Lord, I've got to give an account of that vision I received. And unless I am faithful to it, the people that you have that are hungry will never be fed the things of God. And I'd have to give an account of every person who would not receive these truths if I failed because of that vision that God gave me. We're going to carry on in the teaching. And if you will join us next time, We trust that your heart will be filled with more good things from the Word of God.